I'd like to talk about your own childhood a bit, because this seems a fascinating mix, you know, this Cherokee element. And I gather it's your grandfather that wove all these wonderful tales.
Yes, he was brought up by his grandmother who escaped the Trail of Tears, which is the Indian Cherokee tragedy, I guess, where they had to flee from the soldiers and walk to Oklahoma, which is a couple thousand miles. She hid in the mountains as a 16-year-old young woman and survived it. And she brought him up and told him all the stories and the mythologies and the potions, things that she would make to make him better, and he would tell me.
Were you fascinated as a child?
Glued to his side.
And when you heard about, you know, these strong women in your family, because your grandfather told you about, would have been his grandmother?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, has that influenced your own writing a lot, you know, when you come to write some of your slightly, not controversial material, but topical material and material of issue?
Well, the Cherokee it's a matriarchal society, so I think because of that, you know, women were always empowered, and you were expected at the round table to have your 2 cents, and your views were considered. And so I was brought up with that. So women, it wasn't like you know your place.
No.
I mean, my mother would say, I have a tomahawk right here. And my mother, you know, as a minister's wife, she would look, Jackie O, that would be her look at church, you know, with her little hat and all that. But she always had a, they call them steel magnolias, these Southern women,
Sure.
and there's a reason.
Yes, and looking at the album, the way you have woven some of the Cherokee stories into that, or the basis of it, but coupled with the fact that you were in New York on September the 11th last year. So what impact did that have on some of the material?
I think walking down Fifth Avenue that day and smelling New York burning, the idea that a friend or your mother was wounded, and yes, there was the mass murder, also the city was, she became flesh and blood that day. I think the French have always seen France as a creature, and America hasn't necessarily seen their country as a mother, but the Native Americans always have. So that day, I think she became flesh and blood for a lot of people.
So I suppose as a writer, you couldn't help, you know, writing that and expressing that within your material.
As a writer, to be out on the road, we toured subsequently after that, to be out on the road when the masks were down, when people were, I don't know, I've never been exposed to something like this where people were talking about how they felt in a way that I've never seen.